I want to bring my panel in on this. Jack Quinn served as former White House counsel to President Clinton and chief of staff to Vice President Gore, Evan Siegfried, a Republican strategist, and Tim O'Brien, executive editor of Bloomberg View and Gadfly. Jack, to you first. You haven't read the book, but I'm guessing you've seen the interview. Do you see a smoking gun anywhere?
Well, I don't see a smoking gun. Let me say, first of all, I honor James Comey's service to the country and the rule of law. I'm troubled by the timing of the publication of his book. The investigation here is in the hands of Mr. Mueller in the Southern District of New York, and conceivably in the Attorney General for the state of New York. I think that his injecting himself now is unhelpful. It's bad timing, just as was the bad timing of his announcement about reopening the investigation of Mrs. Clinton during the campaign. I wish he had held off. I don't think this makes life easier for the FBI. I don't think it makes life easier for Mr. Mueller. And it was just an unnecessary intrusion at a what I think is delicate moment in this investigation.
The thing I think many of us thought we would get out of the book was real wrongdoing. The fact that Jim Comey is pushing this idea that the president is morally unfit and people need to stand up and vote. We're not looking for an ex-FBI director to tell people who should vote. So, Evan, is the White House missing an opportunity to say here, look, Jim Comey didn't say that the president did anything illegal?
I think the White House is really blowing it again because we know they miss opportunities. They're responding.
They could take this as a win.
They could take it as a win, and they could stay above the fray and say, listen, James Comey, he's entitled to sell his books. We're going to talk about the issues that matter. But instead, the White House and the RNC are spending money rebutting James Comey. In fact, they're inflating and amplifying his message. No, James Comey's book is not going to change anybody's minds. If you liked the president, you're going to be attacking James Comey. And if you didn't like the president, you're going to be attacking Trump and saying, here's a smoking gun. It's an ink blot. But the White House should be, and the RNC should be focusing on, say, the midterm elections. And also, they're incentivizing the anti-Trump book market because look at the sales or the pre-sales. The book comes out tomorrow, and it's through the roof. 850,000 copies were printed in advance, and at least 200,000 have been sold in pre-sales.
Okay, great. Well, then this administration or this presidency thus far has paid lawyers a whole lot of money, and it's sold a whole lot of books. But does this story, Tim, does it change anyone's view? Does it change anyone's vote? Because it certainly seems like, listen, he's saying his skin was orange. It looked like he went tanning. His ties were too long. His hands were really small. People who felt that way already felt that way.
Right. I mean, I think that's why the issue of a smoking gun is so important. I think that's also the challenge that Bob Mueller faces at the end of the day. Whenever his investigation concludes in the future, will he have a legal narrative and a story that disturbs voters and members of Congress about the president's conduct? I think everything that Comey has said is known. I also agree with Jack. I think strategically, in terms of the Mueller investigation, it's a shame that Comey came out now with this book. I think he's more valuable as a witness who's not seen as a self-promoter, a witness who's not trying to sell books, but a witness who has a story to tell that Mueller can deploy in an investigation.
Jack, I want to...
Yes? If I may, to Tim's point, I mean, he says at one point in the interview that perhaps the president obstructed justice. Well, that could be, under certain circumstances, an impeachable offense, of course. And then he says the president shouldn't be impeached. And he says it in a way that suggests the American people deserve punishment for electing him. The Constitution doesn't work that way. If indeed there are high crimes and misdemeanors, then impeachment is in order. I'm not suggesting that we know that now. But again, he's injecting this sort of moral conclusion in an area where a fine analysis of the law is what's really in order.
I think
and the issue on the president being morally unfit, those issues were known before he won. Whether we're talking about a career of lying about things great and small, the Access Hollywood tape, the people he surrounded himself by, everyone knew that when they voted for him. That part is not a surprise. The surprise would be, did he commit illegal activity that colluded with Russians to help him get elected, or bad business practices, Evan?
This was already litigated in 2016, yes. And to Jack's point, I think Ed Koch had a very wonderful quote saying the people have spoken and now they must be punished. It seems that's what Comey is saying. But I think if we have to look at James Comey and his career, I served in the Eastern District of New York for 6 years, and James Comey was a revered figure at that time. And over the past year, since he was fired as FBI director, he has taken the integrity and respect he has earned throughout the legal community and the law enforcement community and set it on fire with how he's been showboating with this book, the timing of the investigation, and that's a very sad thing to see happen.
I don't think he set it on fire. I think he's thrown a wrench into the investigation. Jim Comey still has enormous credibility. When President Trump starts tweeting at Jim Comey yesterday that I never asked you to take a loyalty pledge, I don't believe that for a second. You know, omerta is one of the sine qua nons of Trumplandia. You don't survive there unless you're loyal to Trump first. And I think Comey's account of all of their meetings has enormous credibility. I just think no one wants Jim Comey to pass moral judgment. Jim Comey should be part of the legal process.
But what's twisted is Jim Comey may be absolutely correct in comparing Trump's behavior to that of a mob boss. But Trump and his posse are okay with that. Michael Cohen loves that brand. They actually think, as upsetting as it is that it's cool. Jack, I want to share more of the interview. Just take a look.
Do you think the Russians have something on Donald Trump?
I think it's possible. I don't know. These are more words I never thought I'd utter about a president of the United States, but it's possible. It always struck me and still strikes me as unlikely. And I would have been able to say with high confidence about any other president I dealt with, but I can't. It's possible.
So he's saying it's possible. Does it sound like he's holding back because he's possibly sharing information with Robert Mueller, or he really doesn't know? And if he doesn't know, kind of makes you think, well, then who does?
Well, it's hard to say. But look, I think I certainly wouldn't be the first, nor would he, to suggest that the president's silence in the face of what is clearly an interference on the part of Russia in our democratic elections is remarkable and suggestive of something going on that is not at the surface. And specifically, any number of people have wondered aloud, is he somehow beholden in a way that prevents him from condemning Russia in the very strongest possible terms and with the strongest sanctions on the part of the United States for what it did, what it is trying to do, and what it continues to try to do to interfere with America and its democratic processes?
Yes, I, too, am on that list of people and would love to know, what is it? How about President Trump and Putin?